Shannon, why do you think the shares reacted this way?
Well, look, I think, the stock has been relatively strong through, since earnings. And I think that a lot of what they announced was sort of in line with people's expectations. I do think that there'll be some sort of digesting of what it means from an ASP perspective from what they announced. Basically, based on our estimates, we think that there's probably about a 10% potential for a 10% year-over-year increase in ASP, which is significant given, how ASPs increased this prior year. So, they're definitely mix shifting up. And whereas there was a lot of questions about their ability to do it last year when they launched the iPhone 10, I think at this point they have significant experience to know what the market will take and will absorb. So I feel much more confident with the pricing moves that they made today.
ASP, the average selling price of the iPhone, $724 last quarter. There's an expectation it could go up to potentially as high as $793. We spoke to Pierre Ferragu of New Street Research. They've got the lone sell rating on Apple. And his view is that the iPhone 10 has done so well so far that there's not a lot of room for more upgrades at this point, and it means that next year, in their view, will be a disappointment. What do you think about that theory?
Well, I think, one of the things that's interesting from an Apple perspective is that their installed base has grown double digits the last several years on an annual basis. So they've got a significantly large installed base with which to try to target. I think the $749 phone will be very attractive to a large number of those players, but, based on our research and conversations with people, clearly China likes the newest and greatest and big, so, that will help with the Max. I think that, again, there's a group of people who are on this sort of every year cycle that will go out and buy the latest one. So I'm not thinking that, they sort of, exhausted the potential pool of iPhone 10 purchasers with what they did last year. Clearly, it surprised, I think, both them and the street in terms of, how iPhone 10 didn't fall off. But I think that also gives them a lot of support to the fact that, they could go to, almost $1,100 for the high-end phone. And, I think they'll get it. Will it be a huge percentage of sales? No, maybe not necessarily, but I think the combination of the two OLED devices will sell very well.
The OLED devices, the 10s and the 10s Max.
Right.
Talk to us about what you see happening in other international markets. China obviously sells a lot of iPhones, but it's complicated given what's going on with the administration. Apple has been struggling in India, where the price of the cheapest iPhone is still very high. And then you have all of these other developing markets.
Well, look, I think one of the things that Apple did last year and that they've continued to do this year is that they're keeping a very wide product set. So they're going to have the S6s out in some markets, which will be priced under $400, which gets very attractive, in a lot of these markets. Maybe not India, but, with the mass market. But in, China and other areas, I think it's a good price point. And then, obviously you run all the way up to the high end. So it kind of depends. I think Europe is a bit more price sensitive than the U.S., certainly. Japan tends to like a smaller form factor. So that would be more like the iPhone 10s or, perhaps maybe some of the smaller phones. It really, I think, has become somewhat bifurcated by market for Apple. But again, the important thing is that they do have all of these products to target all the various price points and bands that they need to. Again, I think, when you look at the competition, you look at where Apple's at, and you look at the recurring nature of the hardware purchases that they have. I mean, once you get into the ecosystem, you tend to stay. I think it bodes well for iPhone sales in their fiscal 2019, which would start right now.